I love the diagnostic tools and the technology around our current medical system. I love that. What I don't like is that it's become disease management. For these diseases that we have, these chronic things, we're just not spending enough time really peeling the layers back and getting down to the root as to why aren't you sleeping? Why do you have anxiety? Why do you have insomnia? Why are you having constant headaches? Why is your stomach hurting you all the time? Why are you having trouble going to the bathroom? Most women these days are prescribed an antidepressant. That's terrible. That's, to me, what I do. That's not acceptable. That's abandoned.
Welcome back to New York's Business Podcast. My name is Jacob Restituto. I'm the host and owner of Restituto Media, a full-service photo and video company here based on Long Island. And today I'm with Karen Sullivan, the founder and owner of the Wellness Stop in Port Jefferson. So we're filming in your store today. And
Yep.
as we'll get into, because we spoke a little bit beforehand, that this store is an extension of what you do professionally. So
Yes.
really looking forward to hearing your story. So thank you for taking the time to come on.
Oh
And
my goodness, of course.
why don't you introduce yourself?
So as you said, my name is Karen Sullivan. I'm the owner and founder of the Wellness Stop. We're located here in Port Jefferson, New York. I also live here in Port Jefferson, so I really wanted, it was really, really important to me to invest in the community where I live. And that's why we looked at this location for several months before we finally opened last April of 2024. So it's been really exciting. Owner and founder of the store, and professionally, besides being a store owner and a retail owner, I'm also a certified functional medicine coach. So the store really is an extension of what I do professionally. It's really been my life's work for the last 18 years to help support and educate the community around better ways to take care of themselves.
There's a lot to talk about in taking care of yourself better.
I
So,
know.
can you unpack that for me a little bit? What does that look like? What is your job as
Yeah.
I'm going to butcher the title, so I'm not going to
No,
try.
it's okay.
So
It's okay.
as a functional nutritionist,
Yeah,
essentially.
functional nutritionist and a coach. So functional medicine really means like if you find a doctor that's like a functional provider or a functional medicine provider, really what they're doing is they've gone the extra step in they're a board certified or certified medical license provider, but they've gone the extra step in functional med because they want to get down to the root cause as to what's going on with people, right? Instead of just constantly band-aiding and prescribing medication all the time, which, obviously that's a big topic right now in our world and what's going on. So, and it's funny, I just said to somebody the other day, I remember at 39, I'm now 57, right? And when I started on this journey at 39, I remember my friends thinking I was having some kind of a psychotic break because I was concerned about dyes in our food. I was concerned about pesticides and chemicals in our food. I was concerned about pesticides and chemicals in my cleaning products, my skincare, what's in my water. I was concerned about all of that 18 years ago. So fast forward to now and what's being discussed in mainstream media, I am so happy that that's happening because now I can kind of get off my soapbox a little bit and I don't have to really focus on that as much anymore because mainstream media is kind of taking care of that for people like myself and functional practitioners, around Long Island. So it's good.
Yeah, they're essentially doing free marketing for you, and now people
Yes.
have an idea of, hey, there's a problem. How do I fix it? And then
Right.
you can insert
Right.
yourself there.
Yeah, exactly. And, for me, really having the store here is an opportunity. I feel like we need to come back to a sense of community and belonging and a place for people to gather and learn. And that's what this is. So it's not about me, it's about you, it's about my neighbor, it's about the community and having a resource for the community. That's incredibly important to me. So me obviously focusing on nutrition, but I also have a whole team of professionals that I work with. So I have doctors that I refer to, I have therapists, all kinds of integrative practitioners that I am constantly referring to. And I love that because it's not about me, it's about you, and it's about the care team that you're going to put in place for yourself and for your family. I guess my biggest thing now, as a functional medicine coach, is I just want people to know that they have options, right? So if they're not feeling well, I just want them to know that they have options and choices in how they're going to take care of their body.
So many ways we could take this conversation. There's so many points that I want to piggyback on. The first one I want to talk about is you mentioned bringing community, or bringing essentially community back to the community, and this making this a communal space. One thing I heard you speaking with a potential client before we started filming, it was just it was a natural conversation, and I was kind of just perusing the store as you were talking to her. Is you talked about all the different things that you offer here outside of products and obviously
Yeah.
your services, but you offer
Right.
a book club and
Yes.
I think even like not maybe
Yeah.
courses or
Classes,
classes.
workshops. Yeah, so we decided last year when we were trying to, besides offering like retail products, right? Like you said, we were like, all right, well, what else can we really offer the community? Some of those services are complimentary. We don't charge for those things, right? So the book club, we do nutrition classes once a month. Those are all complimentary and free to the community. We offer our women's wellness series that happens every other month. Those we do charge a fee for because I have practitioners that come in and we have guest speakers and panelists, and that's constantly rotating through everything from talking about vaginal health and hormones all the way through to mental health, all the way through to other business and entrepreneurs here on Long Island that created a cleaning line, which that's what we're going to be talking about on May 8th here. So yeah, so we have it literally. I know it can be very overwhelming at times, but that's where people like me help you to kind of cut through all that red tape and all that information that you're surrounded by every day. We're on information overload, honestly, Jacob. We have no idea like what is credible and what's not at this point. So that's where people like me come into the fold, really to help you kind of navigate like what's going to be best for you.
I couldn't agree more. I think that uh, I grew up in the information age, and
Mhm.
at this point, I can't even tell where. For example, let me backtrack a little. There's so much information out there, and so much information that's good, but also so much that's fake or misguided information or just wrong information.
Yes.
Sometimes maliciously, but most of the time not. It's just
Yes.
somebody that it was a wives' tale that ended up becoming like a truth
Yes.
that's really not a truth, or it's a half truth.
Right.
Point being though is like you can't even tell what's real with AI
I
anymore.
know.
And I'm not saying I'm not anti-AI. I'm actually very pro AI. It's a little scary sometimes how we navigate this
Right.
route. And I really like what you said about how like tying it into the professionals and people that have devoted their life work to
Right.
guiding people. And it's not saying, hey, this is that road you definitely need to go, but it's like you said
Yeah.
earlier, giving
An option.
options.
And I think it's almost like a buffet, right? You go to the buffet and you've got choices in front of you, and that's really what I want the public and the community to understand. You've got choices, and options, which is so important.
One thing I want to comment on is going around your store and looking at some of the products is how many local products you have.
Yeah.
And how many, well, first of all, when I made a comment earlier, and it's the truth, that this store is dangerous for me. There are so many products that I would be like, wow, I need this in my home.
Right.
And even more so the fact that they're local. And one thing I want to comment on, I think that a lot of people, there's a typical um, conception or idea, I don't know, judgment that a store like this is going to be very expensive and very high. Like I just price people out.
Sure.
And you
I
you
could see
mentioned a
that.
lot of products that, for example, we talked about the fact that I was a hunter and you had
Yeah.
a tick spray.
Yep.
I was like, how much is a tick spray? And you mentioned the price, and I was like,
Yeah. $12.50.
yeah, I was like, I couldn't believe it.
Yes.
I could go buy the chemical version for probably the same price, if
Right.
not potentially more.
Exactly.
And I'm like, wait, hold on a sec. I have
Yes.
a just as effective version for this. I was really appreciative of, in the home cleaning products I was looking at
Right.
while you were speaking to the potential or the clients.
Yep.
And I was like, these are really like priced
Right.
nice.
And the other thing too is that when you go into a space with a product that's made very well and that's made ethically well, what happens is that a little goes a long way. So Like with skincare, it's the same thing. You don't need to use a lot if you're putting on some kind of serum on your face or some kind of moisturizer. The same rule of thumb applies for the cleaning products, right? Like the laundry detergent that we've been testing for the last several months, and the dishwashing detergent and the dish soap. I have products that we started with in testing mode 3, 4 months ago that I still have. So you might pay a little more for some of those things up front, but a little goes a long way because you don't need a lot. And that's the thing, because the products are made really well and they're super concentrated.
I would absolutely agree with you, and I think that it's interesting to see. I've been on the bandwagon with you, not maybe not as long as you have with the 18 years,
Yeah.
but the more than most people have been on the bandwagon. And I've always been open to the idea of paying more because you pay for it at some point. You either pay for it now up front and live a better life, or you pay for it later in medical bills.
Correct.
And so I'm willing to pay for it up front. I think that it's interesting to watch society as they grow and change and pivot into like, hey, I'm willing to pay you a little bit more for this or the
Yeah.
organic version. But even that being said, I was surprised that they're not here, at least it's not that much more. And I want to commend you for that, because I think people would, maybe you could adjust your prices, and I think people would be willing to pay more. And I
Yeah.
appreciate the fact that you're not pricing people out.
No, because I mean, there we do have things in here that are a little on the higher price point,
I want to
right?
say for the audience, it's not
Yeah.
necessarily cheap. You're not selling cheap
No,
products, but
no,
it's fair.
but it's a
It's fair
it's
price.
fair and affordable.
Yeah.
And that's important because we want to make sure that everyone has access. And if someone's not going to hire me for coaching services, that's fine. But that's why we offer, a complimentary nutrition class every month. If they're not really in that space, or maybe they're just kicking off this new health journey that they're on, right? But they're not really ready to yet work with someone like me, but they want to start to really cut their teeth and sink their teeth into all that kind of information. That's important for us to offer like complimentary services and classes, which, like I said, we do a monthly nutrition class that's taught by me. That's once a month. Last month, we did a grocery shopping tour at Wild by Nature in Setauket. And there was like 10 of us traipsing around the store and reading labels and me imparting my wisdom on what I know. I'm trying to think because I've kind of forgotten. I am a 28-year cancer survivor. So that was really at 29, that was kind of like the beginning, really, of when the what hit the fan with thyroid cancer. And then had my son at 34. And then after that, I really went into this terrible downward spiral with my health, just not really understanding what was happening to my body. And that's literally what has catapulted me into doing what I do today, and why I have stayed on that path. This is not something that I just picked up like a year or two ago. This is 18 years of me kind of in the trenches of learning and going to school and getting certified and working with functional physicians in clinic and remote, over the last 10 to 12 years. This is my life's work, and my mission is to help all of us live healthier, happier, and better than what we've been doing. And that's why, like we were talking about before, it's great for somebody like me that mainstream media is talking about this, because for years I've been like pounding my chest and saying, you've got to pay attention to this kind of stuff. And now I don't need to talk about that, because of the fact that mainstream media is talking about it, which is great. But now, where my coaching practice has really shifted in probably the last like 3 to 4 years, is working with women really between the ages of like 35 to 65, and helping them understand kind of what's happening to their bodies around hormone dysregulation and hormone deficiencies. So that's really a lot of what we're focusing on now. And men too. Men have hormones that need to be optimized. But the difference is that if you go to your doctor and you say that you're not feeling well, or that your sex drive is low, you're going to be prescribed something immediately. If we say that, normally what they're doing is they're giving us an antidepressant. They're not really taking a deep dive and looking at the functional way that our bodies are performing or not. And that's one of the things that we're working on here. That's why we developed the roadmap, the wellness roadmap, of how we can help women understand like what's happening to their bodies.
It's a lot to unpack here, so I want to mention a couple of things
Yeah.
so that we don't forget. Two things I want to talk about are one, practical tips for people beginning their journey,
Hmm.
and second, which we'll talk about now, is the segmentation of the medical industry. I heard a
Yeah.
really interesting podcast, and I actually just had a conversation with a physical therapist recently, and he was talking about how they look at the body as a whole,
Yep.
as opposed to just for example, an arm,
Yeah.
an arm doctor is just going to look at the arm, but
Right.
that arm could be very well connected to the back, which is then connected to the sciatica, which is, there's
Yes.
so many different things. And
Yes.
what this podcast was saying was the problem with the segmentation. Segmentation is the wrong word. The specialization of
Hmm.
specific industries
Hmm.
specialization of specific fields within the medical industry is that so many people, you become so hyper focused on your area that if there's an issue in that area, you're going to try to fix that area,
Yeah.
which is nothing wrong with that, but that might be a symptom of something else.
Right.
And I appreciate the
Exactly.
fact that you mentioned that you're looking at the whole body,
Right.
where an earache, for example, I think this is the example I used in the other podcast. My daughter had a cough recently, and the cough got better, but then it got worse. So I was like, all right, I think that at this point I need to check something out because
Yeah.
it got, well, I don't know why it got
Right.
worse all of a sudden. So we took her to the pediatrician, and it turned out she had an ear infection. I would have had no idea that
That was the
and
ear infection was causing the
and I
cough.
know it's so funny that
Right.
I'm actually talking about tradition,
Yeah.
I don't know, do we call
Yeah.
doctors traditional medicine, or is that modern
Yeah.
medicine?
Or allopathic.
So it's funny that I'm
Yeah.
talking about referencing that, but the idea is the fact that I had no idea that the ear was causing the cough.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
hypothetically, if I just
Yeah.
went to a chest doctor, they could be like, "Oh, just take this cough
Correct.
medicine."
Yeah.
Whereas opposed to it's like,
Right.
"No, just let's fix the ear
Right.
infection, and then we can
Right. And
fix
I
that."
think too, like, we love traditional medicine, right? I do. I love it.
When we say traditional medicine, is that like ancient medicine, or is that like modern medicine,
I
like the
would say
doctors?
modern. I would
Okay,
say modern
I don't just want to make
medicine.
sure what we're talking
Yeah,
about.
and like I love kind of I love the diagnostic tools and the technology around our current medical system. I love that. What I don't like about our current medical system is that it's become disease management. That's what I don't like. But like if you fall outside and trip and you possibly have broken your arm, you're not going to go to your chiropractor to get adjusted, right? Or no disrespect to your physical therapist. You're going to go to the ER, you're going to get an x-ray, and if your arm is broken, you'll be put in a cast. You might take some anti-inflammatories around that. That's when modern medicine and traditional medicine and allopathic medicine, whatever you want to call it, really works to our advantage. But for these diseases that we have, these chronic things, we're just not spending enough time really peeling the layers back and getting down to the root as to why aren't you sleeping? Why do you have anxiety? Why do you have insomnia? Why are you having constant headaches? Why is your stomach hurting you all the time? Why are you having trouble going to the bathroom? Most women these days are prescribed an antidepressant. That's terrible. That's terrible. So that's to me what I do. That's not acceptable. That's a band-aid. So that's why I love doing what I do because I love helping women and families know, really kind of, I guess, helping them find their voice and allowing them to feel seen, to feel heard, to feel loved, to feel supported, and then be able to talk to their doctors and their care team like, hey, well, what about this? Or, hey, can we explore this? Or, hey, can I get this blood test done? You know, and that's where I think we need to try to come back to center in looking at, how do we marry the two together? And that's really what I love to do. I work with board certified physicians, but they're very open-minded. So we're marrying the two together, which is fantastic. They're running labs, they're taking your blood pressure, they're doing all that stuff in a traditional office, but they're also concerned about your diet and your sleep and your stress management. The head is connected to the rest of the body. So, like what that physical therapist said, you could have something wrong with your arm, but then you're having back issues and neck issues, and it also might be affecting other parts of that side of your body. So I love that, and that's what's really important.
You took the words right out of my mouth because one thing I wanted to clarify after talking is that I'm also not anti-modern medicine as well. My
Mhm.
wife is a nurse, and so and I was
Okay.
going to talk about the marriage between literally the words a marriage between the two
Yeah.
is the perfect
Right.
analogy because that's exactly how we see things. We are very open-minded into how we want to
Mhm.
address things, and we don't necessarily run to the doctors, but we
Right.
also really appreciate when they're there and
Right.
appreciate
Exactly.
very much like you said. For example, I
Exactly.
sliced my foot
Right.
open and cut the tendon in my foot 2 years ago, and I wasn't gonna go to my chiropractor for
No.
that. Like I
No.
needed a
Or your
surgeon. Yeah,
acupuncturist.
I needed a
You went right
surgeon.
to the ER and you needed a surgeon.
So
Exactly.
it's the balance
Yeah.
between the two.
It is the balance. And I think that we just have to I want to make sure that people know that they just have options.
Yeah,
That's it.
and let them choose.
Yeah, and let them choose. It's your freedom and your choice as to how you want to take care of your body. But if you don't know, you don't know, right? So that's what I love. I just love letting people see, like, okay, this is what is here for you to choose, and you can choose if you are going to have a grass-fed, pasture-raised organic diet or not. Now, if you choose not to do that, here's what you're going to be exposed to. Here's what you're being exposed to. Here is potentially the chemicals that are in your food. Here's the chemicals that are in your skincare, your body care, your laundry detergent, all of those things in your water. I feel, here on Long Island, you know, a lot of our disease rates that we have here, I think, are coming from our environment and our water. And I think that we need to filter our water. I think that everyone should have a whole house water filter, in my professional opinion, in your home, or at least get your water tested to understand what's in it. I think that that's really important.
I want to know first steps. Somebody that may be listening to this that
Okay.
is like, okay, I have not taken any steps for it because
Right.
it's easy for you and I who have been on this journey for
Yeah.
you longer than I have, but
Mm-hmm.
me for several years as well. I've taken many of these steps, so we can go really in depth on a lot of these things.
Yeah.
A lot of the audience and people I speak to are not very like they said, okay, I'm so
Yeah. I don't even
overwhelmed.
know where to. I don't even know where to
What would
begin.
the first
Yeah.
three steps be?
I mean, the first three steps would be, potentially to work with somebody like me, or to work with, a functional medicine nutritionist or a coach or a functional physician. That would be step one. And then if you're really having some pretty chronic health issues, you got to get some lab work done. That would be step two. And then now you have to action and take action around the lab work, right? Most of the time, people come to me because they're looking to clean up their diet and they're not feeling well and get on some really good supplementation if we feel that's necessary. So then that really would be the third step, is to work with, either a really open-minded registered dietitian, or, like I said, a coach or a nutritionist, and that's a good place to start. That's why, like I said, we've developed the wellness roadmap. We have an in-body machine here in the store. So for us here, what we do, we've developed this wellness blueprint. That's our step one, because that's the baseline of where I start with a client, because then that gives me an idea of what their muscle health looks like, what their visceral fat looks like, how well is their body getting hydrated or dehydrated, like what does that look like? Tells me how much muscle they have on their body, for men and women. And then we start to look at the nutrition, and we start to really clean it up, and really get people to start eating real food, whole food, nutrient dense food. As much We try to reduce as much processed food as we can, and then we move into looking at what supplements they're taking. Where did they source that from? What does that look like? And then we also start to look at, okay, well, what other modalities does somebody need? Are they having a lot of back issues and back pain? Do they need to see a chiropractor? Maybe do they also need some stress management tools as well, besides? So maybe we refer out to an acupuncturist or a massage therapist. Or if someone is really feeling very disconnected from the brain and the rest of the body, Do they need a mental health professional on their team? And then we have a whole team, like I said, a whole care team of people that we refer out to. And then we build that in addition to their traditional gastroenterologists and their primary doctors and their cardiologists. I work with anybody. Like I said, this is not about me. This is about the client and them really feeling their best and living as optimally as they can, and where we are right now in 2025.
Yeah, very interesting. One thing I want to point out is, I don't know, I'm assuming this was just based on your truths, obviously, but you even explained in your 3 steps the marriage between traditional medicine
Yeah.
and the whole body experience. Because you started with whole body, but then it was also like, hey, let's also get some lab work so we can address it,
Yeah,
and then
of
give them
course.
options of
Well,
how they
yeah,
want to handle
because
it.
I mean, there are like different modalities out there, right? Where kinesiology is big in the integrative naturopathic world. But I like lab work. I also like science, and I like things that are peer reviewed and science backed. It's not just about intuitively. Yes, you want to listen to your intuition as well. I think we've also moved away from that in a lot of regards. Men and women, you want to understand, you want to start to understand what your body needs, right? Around intuition. But I also think let's use the science that we have. Let's get some lab work done. Or if somebody needs to have an x-ray done of their back, get the x-ray. Obviously we don't want to be like radiating you all the time, right? Because you are exposed to radiation in those situations. But if you need the x-ray, get the x-ray, you know? So I am not, I am very open-minded. I am not one way or the other. I think the biggest thing that I've never compromised with my own health is my mental health and also the types of food that I'm putting into my body and my family's body. Those two things for me are non-negotiable. I don't compromise on that. I've been eating an organic diet for 20 years, so this is not my first rodeo, I guess.
And it's amazing that it's becoming more and more accessible at this
Yes,
point.
yeah, for sure.
So as you mentioned, you just celebrated your first year in the
Yes,
store. Obviously, you've been doing your work for a long time, but the store is celebrating a year.
yeah.
I want to know, boots on the ground, first year experience of opening the store in a
Ooh.
downtown Main
Yeah,
Street kind of
yeah,
area.
yeah.
What is that like?
Well, we're located right in the village, Port Jefferson. I love the location that we have. It's very walkable outside our store, especially like on the weekends. It's great. We have the door open, music playing. People can kind of pop in and out. We have lots of tables and chairs. People can come and sit outside. They don't even have to buy anything because we're just trying to create a sense of community. But it's been a lot of work, opening your own brick and mortar. It's not easy. I am really, really blessed that I have an amazing team. I have 2 employees here that help me run the store, so I'm not doing this by myself. But yeah, it's not easy. It's definitely been a big lift, but I can't believe it. I mean, we're now our 1 year. We're going to celebrate on June 20th, and I can't believe it. It's incredible. I I was actually last year I was actually going into retirement in my career, like 3, 4 months before I opened the store, and then I got this overwhelming, like energetic need to do more for my community. And last February of 2024, driving down the street, looked over to the right and saw this vacant storefront, and then walked in, met with the real estate agent, walked in, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is the spot. This is what I have to do. I have to open a store for the community." And I'm 57, Jacob. It's like, I'm older, you know, so it's like, like I said, I was going into retirement. I was still coaching, but I had really slowed down. I was coaching like 1 or 2 days a week, and now I am ramping up again. My coaching practice in the store, but it's beautiful. It's awesome. I mean, it's beautiful that what we've created, and it's such a great resource for the community and beyond. I just want people to be healthy, happy and healthy. That's my mission in life, and to live optimal. That's what I want, for everybody. They deserve it. We all deserve it. We don't deserve to feel sick and tired and depressed. That's terrible. You know, it's just a terrible way to live. So I'm just happy to offer what we offer here, and again, just educate the community.
You mentioned mainstream media essentially being the spokesperson for your industry at this point,
Yeah,
or
it
pointing
is.
people. Let me even rephrase it a little bit to say that they are more so pointing out the problems, because
Yes.
mainstream media doesn't typically offer solutions. They just point out the
Well, and
problems, and
and you
then
know what? And for me, right? I think what happened is that, like I said earlier, right? At 39, all my friends and family thought I was having a psychotic break, right? Because I was concerned about what was in the water. I was eating organic. I was looking at all the dye and all the chemicals and all the junk that was in my son's food. My son is now 23, so that was a long time ago. So for me, what's happened is it's it's extremely validating because I've been talking about this for a long time. Not that I wasn't taken seriously, but for the people that didn't really understand how important that is, it's extremely validating for somebody like me because now I'm like, yes, yes, mainstream media is talking about red 40, or they're talking about red 3, or they're talking about how a lot of these chemicals are causing a lot of neuro disruptions in our bodies, and causing gut issues in our bodies. So, and it's awesome because we're having conversations and I'm meeting incredible people. It's so awesome. People will come in that really didn't really understand what any of that is, and now we're having a conversation. I love that.
I really admire your perspective on this because, personally, I think it can become very. I'm happy to see that you're not bitter, because I think that
No,
sometimes you'd be
no.
like, I've been saying this for years. You thought I was crazy, and now all of a sudden it's true. I think some people could
Well,
be a little bitter about
yeah,
that, and I
no, I
admire the
mean,
fact that
I
you've
could
taken the
see
high
that,
road.
but you know how, like for me, I feel like a lot of weight has been taken off my shoulders because when you're like when you believe in something so passionately, you want to, and if it's good for somebody, you want to share it with everybody and tell everybody about it, right? And now I can kind of get off the soapbox and I can kind of put that bag down, or that backpack of all this heavy stuff I've been carrying around for the last 18 years. I can kind of put that down now because I don't really need to. I don't, we still talk about it here at the Wellness Stop, but I don't need to be like, you need to listen to me, like you pay attention to this. I don't need to be like trying to grab people's attention because it's everywhere. It's all over the internet. It's on, mainstream media, as well. So it's good.
So what's next for the Wellness Stop?
What's next for the Wellness Stop? Um, we are working on relaunching my coaching website. So that's coming out in the next 2 months. It's called Karen Sullivan Wellness. And we're going to be building out courses and videos that people can plug into. So that's happening over the summer and into the fall. And we're still planning a lot of really amazing workshops and classes. We just did our first retreat in March of this year, so we'll probably do another retreat in the fall. Yeah, just, book clubs and, all good stuff. Yeah.
So I really admire the fact that you are concerned, really genuinely concerned, and empathetic towards the problem that so many people are experiencing, and you want to make a difference in their life through your coaching. And I think it's such a unique, from a business perspective, such a unique platform essentially to say, hey, I want to open a store so we can offer an extension of products, but also it's a great conversation starter to then segue people into what really matters, which is your
Right.
coaching,
Yeah.
which is then it's great if they change over their dish soap or their laundry detergent or use an organic tick spray.
Right. Right.
But that's again kind of small from that's the 10th step.
Yeah. One of the steps.
But it's usually typically a later step. Like it'd be great if we
Yeah.
could change their diet or
Yes.
talk to me about what
Yeah.
like some of
Yeah.
the things that you do in that.
Yeah. So that's why and I appreciate you saying that, because that's why we developed the roadmap, because in all my years of doing this and in all, my research and based on previous experience, nutrition. It starts with nutrition. It starts with your diet and what you're eating or what you're not eating, right? You know, we should be eating carbohydrates, we should be having fats, we should be having proteins, but based on what is beneficial for your body. What's good for your body may not be good for me, and vice versa. But we should be eating real food. So in my professional opinion, it starts with nutrition. That's where it starts, because and then you kind of build out from there, right? So then you start to look at, ooh, what about my laundry detergent? What about my body wash? What about my skincare? What am I putting on my children? Oh, how is my sleep? What does my stress management look like? So, but the first, one of the other big steps is nutrition. And that's really where my wheelhouse is. I mean, that's what I focus on, with clients.
People don't want to hear that.
No, I
People,
know.
because it's the
I
truth
know.
is
Well,
it's so
especially in the world of semaglutides, right? And again,
you keep
like
taking the words right out of my mouth.
I am not against GLP-1 drugs. I think that they completely
So just
have their
clarify, those are the
purpose.
things like Ozempic.
Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, all the tritepazides and all that kind of stuff that's coming out on the market. Again, I'm not against them. I think that they need to be used in the right context, but there is no magic pill. There isn't. There
That's
isn't. And
exactly
I
what I was
know
saying.
I
Yeah.
know it's disappointing, right? Because, it's like living clean and living optimally, it requires definitely a lot of discipline and a commitment, and a commitment to yourself, to live optimally. But I've seen some really cool things happen to some of my clients that are taking GLP-1s. So I'm happy about that. But I'm also monitoring what they're eating,
Yeah.
how well they're eating. I'm also monitoring their gut health at the same time, because they have to have a gut protocol if they're taking those medications. And they have to make sure that their proteins are dialed in and their macros are dialed in. That's really, really, really important. I know some people that are getting those medications from various places around Long Island, and there is no support that's happening. And they're not getting any of those counseling services as they're paying out all this money to stay on those medications. So for me, ethically, that's not a good space to be in. So for my clients that I work with, we're making sure that they're not losing muscle, and that they're gaining muscle, and that their guts are intact if they're going to be on those medications. So that's really important.
It's a whole body experience, like you were
Whole
saying.
body experience.
There's no
Exactly.
easy way out. It's the same concept as a person who says, I want a six pack, but I don't want to go to the gym. You can't have it both
Yes.
ways.
Yes. You can't exercise your way out of a bad diet.
Well, not even that. I'm just saying, like, these things that typically you want require work. You want
Yes.
to live a healthy life, it requires work. You want to build a business, it requires work. You want to
Yes.
raise a healthy family, I don't know what the word, not healthy as in physical, but like a mentally good, healthy
Yeah.
family. Well, that requires work. It requires self-discipline,
Right.
controlling your anger, right? Not lashing
Yes.
out on the kid, right?
Yes.
Everything worthwhile requires a bit of work, and
Yeah.
so does your whole body health.
Yeah.
Well, it has been an absolute pleasure hearing your story
Thank
and
you.
getting to experience the wellness shop. So thank you so much for
Thank
taking the
you.
time. I
Thank
highly
you.
recommend, if you're in the Port Jefferson area, definitely come check out the wellness shop. Come speak to Karen or some of her great employees. But if you are a business owner or know any business owners that you think might be a good fit for this podcast, please reach out. And Karen, it's such a pleasure. So thank you so much for
Thank
taking
you.
the time.
Thanks.